You'll just embarrass yourself at that job interview, Mom said. She canceled my ride that day. Years later, I hired her friend's daughter and smiled when she asked, "Wait, you're her daughter?" "You're Beverly's daughter." Kendra looked at me with eyes wide, like she'd just seen a ghost. The same girl I'd hired 2 years earlier, mentored, vouched for, she stood there blinking, trying to reconcile everything she thought she knew with what she'd just found out. I nodded once. Calmly. Yes, Myril Baxter. That was my full name before I started going by Addison. She kept staring at me, mouth slightly open. "She never mentioned you at all," she said quietly. "I don't understand." I smiled, just a little, the kind that holds back 1,000 memories. I didn't say anything else. I didn't have to. I was born in Lubbock, Texas. Dry wind, barbecue, and Baptist churches on every corner. People think it's quiet, simple, boring even. But for me, growing up in Lubbock meant living under a microscope, or more specifically, under Beverly Baxter's microscope. Beverly wasn't abusive, not in the ways people are used to recognizing. She didn't hit, she didn't scream. But she never once said I was enough. Not when I got a B in precalculus, not when I placed in the top 10% of my class, not when I worked part-time after school to help cover bills she pretended didn't exist. She was the kind of mother who smiled in public and criticized in private. "Your posture is terrible. You're not wearing that out of the house. Why would they pick you?" When my dad left, walked out one afternoon with nothing but a duffel bag and his old Navy cap, I watched my mom spiral into something colder than grief. She didn't cry. She turned brittle. She burned every trace of him and told the neighborhood he died in a work accident. I didn't find out until years later that he was living with a new wife in Spokane and had 2 more kids. I didn't call, he didn't write, so it was just me and Beverly. And despite it all, I kept dreaming. I wanted out of Lubbock. I wanted law school, policy, advocacy. I wanted to work on housing reform and public programs, because I saw firsthand what life looked like when you were one small emergency away from everything falling apart. The week I turned 17, I applied for a position as a clerk at Kendrickson and Tate, a local law firm that offered internships to high schoolers from underfunded districts. The application was intense, the interview even more so. I spent nights preparing, researching the firm, reading up on public records. I ironed my only blazer and wrote 4 different versions of my resume. The interview was on a Friday at 3 p.m. My beat-up car had died earlier that week, and public transportation in Lubbock was a joke. So I asked my mom if she could help. She refused to drive me, but said she'd call her friend Marlene to take me. Marlene was always around, Beverly's oldest friend, wine buddy, gossip partner. Her daughter, Kendra, was a few years younger than me. They used to come over for potlucks and Bible study. I got ready for the interview like my life depended on it. Hair back, blazer straight, shoes scuffed but polished. At 2:15, I stood by the front door waiting. By 2:30, no one came. At 2:40, I finally went to the kitchen. Beverly sat at the table, sipping her tea, flipping through a catalog. "Did Marlene forget?" I asked. "I told her not to bother," she said casually. My mouth went dry. "What?" "Why?" She looked at me without blinking. "You'll just embarrass yourself." The words landed like a slap. "That place is for people who come from something," she said. "Connections, confidence. Not girls who smell like fries and mop water." I didn't speak. I just walked out the door, started running in those stupid shoes, and didn't stop until the blister on my heel burst. The law office was miles away. I arrived as they were locking the front doors. One of the receptionists saw me. She told me I was late and handed me a brochure. I went home with blood on my sock and a knot in my throat that would sit there for years. After that, I stopped asking her for help. I kept working, kept applying, and scraped together enough in scholarships and grants to attend UT Austin. I worked 2 jobs all 4 years. Summer breaks weren't a thing. I interned unpaid and poured coffee for professors at 7 a.m. before my classes started. I graduated magna cum laude with a degree in public policy. Then I got into a fellowship program in Dallas. Then, a full-time position. By the time I was 29, I was the youngest deputy director in my department. I never went back to Lubbock, not until her funeral, but that part comes later. 2 years before that, my department was participating in a mentorship initiative with the University of Texas at Dallas. They paired professionals with top graduating seniors for a semester-long internship. I agreed to take 3 internships. One of them was a girl named Kendra Hollowell. I didn't make the connection at first. She had a different last name than I remembered for Marlene, and she carried herself with a quiet determination I recognized. She was sharp. She knew her stuff. She'd done the research. During her interview, she said, "Honestly, I'm just really excited to learn from someone who's done the kind of work I want to do." That stayed with me. She joined our team, and over the next year, she proved herself 10 times over. She was promoted to full-time assistant coordinator by 23. I became her mentor, and I started recommending her for higher-profile assignments. Then came the luncheon at the Adolphus Hotel. It was a networking event, lots of suits, name tags, those awkward little meatballs on sticks. I was chatting with some of the board members when I noticed Kendra walking over with a woman in a beige blazer. "This is Addison," she told the woman. "She's the reason I'm even doing this work." The woman turned toward me. "You're Addison?" "Yes," I said, extending my hand. She hesitated, then blinked. "Wait, you're Beverly Baxter's daughter?" I felt the room go quiet in my head. The background noise of clinking glasses and muted conversations faded. Kendra's head snapped toward me. "You're Beverly's daughter," she said. "Wait, like my mom's Beverly?" I gave a small nod. "Yeah, Myril Baxter. I started going by Addison in college." Kendra just stood there, shocked. I could see the puzzle pieces sliding into place in her head. She never mentioned you, ever." I gave the same smile I'd learned to perfect after years of swallowing bitterness. "She wouldn't have." I didn't say anything else. Didn't need to. The next day, Kendra texted me, "Hey, I hope I didn't do anything weird yesterday. I had no idea. Please know I have nothing but respect for you." I replied, "Don't worry, you didn't do anything wrong." Sometimes people forget the stories they try to bury while still growing roots. I never responded to the follow-up message Kendra sent that night, the longer one where she apologized again, said she'd talked to her mom and was so confused. It was full of exclamation points and words like shocked, didn't know, wish I had known earlier. But I didn't have it in me to explain the history. I didn't need her sympathy or her guilt. What could she say that would make any of it different? And really, it wasn't about her. Marlene must have found out within hours because by that Sunday evening I got an email. Sent from an AOL account, full name in the from field, Marlene Hollowell. Subject line, Myril. It was short. "I had no idea, sweetheart. None, I didn't know you'd made it here and I'm sorry. I should have been there that day. I didn't know your mother canceled the ride. I remember she told me you'd changed your mind. I hope she's proud now." Marlene, I stared at it for a long time, longer than I wanted to admit. I hadn't heard from her in over a decade, and the fact that she even remembered that day told me a lot. But I didn't reply. There wasn't anything to say. She wasn't the villain in the story, but she was there when I needed someone, and she let Beverly speak for both of them. I knew what was coming next before it arrived. A letter, postmarked Lubbock, written in a familiar slanted cursive on heavy ivory paper. No return address, but I'd know that handwriting anywhere. Inside, just a single page, no date, no greeting. I was wrong. I didn't think you'd ever make it because I didn't think anyone from here could. That's not an excuse. It's just the truth. You reminded me of your father in all the ways I hated, his restlessness, his ambitions, his belief that he deserved more than the life we had. But you weren't him. You were stronger. I see your name now, in the news, in the programs. People talk about you in the city council circles. Marlene called me after that luncheon. She said she saw your face and couldn't believe it. Neither could I. You made it. Beverly, that letter sat on my desk for 3 weeks before I tucked it away. Not because it meant something, but because even when she was apologizing, she couldn't bring herself to say she was proud. There's something cruel about growing up with someone who only values you in hindsight. Around the same time, Kendra started pulling back a bit. She was still professional, still capable, but the warmth had dimmed. I didn't blame her. Learning that your mentor was the estranged daughter of your mother's best friend, especially when that best friend had spent years pretending I didn't exist, had to be disorienting. She finally approached me after a project debrief one Friday afternoon. "Hey, she started, shifting awkwardly. "Can I ask you something personal?" I nodded. "Of course. Why didn't you ever say anything before?" "I mean, when you realized who I was." I looked at her carefully. She didn't seem accusatory, just curious, maybe even hurt. "Because it wasn't relevant," I said. You got here on your own. I wasn't going to taint that by dragging my past into it. Kendra bit her lip. My mom's been acting weird since she found out. Keep asking questions. Keep saying she should have called you back when you were in school. I gave a small smile. She didn't owe me anything. She had her loyalties. She says your mom told her you gave up on the interview, that you decided not to go. I nodded slowly. Yeah, that track. Kendra paused. I'm sorry. For what? For being connected to her, to them. You don't have to apologize for who you're related to. I never wanted revenge, Kendra. I just wanted a chance, that's all. She nodded, eyes slightly glossy. You gave me that. I gave you what someone else should have given me. That's how the cycle ends, right? Kendra let out a breath. She looked relieved, in that deep kind of way that happens when something shifts between people and makes room for more. We didn't talk about it again after that. A few months later, Kendra was promoted again. She took over a pilot housing initiative and made it better than I ever could have imagined. She got her name on a couple of white papers, presented at a state conference, and started getting recruiter calls. When she eventually accepted a position at a nonprofit in Austin, I wrote her a recommendation letter that made her cry. She sent me a message a week into her new role. I hope you know I carry everything you taught me into this new chapter. Thank you for giving me a chance when you didn't have to. Also, my mom keeps asking for your number. She wants to clear the air. I told her I'd pass the message along, but I won't push. You don't owe her anything. Just thought you should know. I never replied to that part of the message. I didn't need to. The truth is, sometimes people spend so long pretending you don't exist that by the time they want to acknowledge you, it's no longer about you. It's about their guilt, their shame, their image. Beverly had a talent for rewriting history. But history doesn't care what story you tell if the evidence is still alive and walking around, breathing proof. And I was proof. I didn't respond to Marlene. I didn't call Beverly. And I didn't give anyone the satisfaction of an emotional outburst. For once in my life, silence felt like power. But that doesn't mean I wasn't still watching. By the time Kendra left for Austin, the department was in the middle of finalizing a $25 million housing revitalization project. I was overseeing the grant allocations and community selection process. We had eyes on several districts across Texas, but one small town kept popping up in our internal meetings, Lubbock. It wasn't my decision alone, but when our advisory board shortlisted it, I didn't object. A few months later, we sent a delegation down to conduct initial surveys. The city council was invited. Local leaders and stakeholders were notified. Beverly sat on the Historical Neighborhood Advisory Committee. I knew she'd be in the room. I wasn't supposed to go. But I requested the visit myself, offering to lead the community panel in person. When I walked into the municipal building, I could feel heads turning. I hadn't set foot in Lubbock in over a decade. The building smelled the same, floor wax, lemon cleaner, and the faintest trace of dust that never quite left old Texas offices. She saw me before I saw her. Sitting 3 rows from the front, hair dyed a harsh reddish-brown now, pearls around her neck like armor. Her lips parted slightly, but she didn't stand. Didn't wave. Just stared as if trying to make sure it was real. I kept my voice steady, measured. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Addison Baxter. I'm the Director of Community Development and Policy Initiatives with TDHCA. Thank you for having me here today. Her eyes widened at the name. Baxter. I hadn't changed it, just buried the first half. But it was enough now to bring the recognition front and center. The meeting proceeded without drama. We discussed infrastructure, zoning, and community impact. The mayor thanked me, shook my hand. Local press took a photo. Beverly watched it all silent. After the event, I walked out into the parking lot alone. I thought maybe she'd come say something, follow me out, but she didn't. She just watched me through the glass, and that was enough. Because I knew what she saw, a daughter she once said would embarrass herself, now speaking as the highest-ranking official in the room. Representing a multi-million-dollar project her committee desperately needed approval for. A daughter she'd tried to forget, now standing in front of her as the one person she couldn't ignore. That was the revenge. Not cruel, not loud. Just permanent. The project moved forward. Lubbock got the funding. Not because of her and not in spite of her, but because I was able to separate personal history from public service. That, too, was something I had learned. Letting go of pettiness didn't mean letting go of justice. A few months later, she tried to reach out again. A card this time. Thick envelope. Elegant cursive. I saw your name in the paper again. I told them at church that you were my daughter. I didn't tell them why I hadn't said it before. But I'm telling you now, I'm sorry. I don't expect anything from you, but I'm proud. Beverly, I read it once. Then I filed it away with the others. I didn't reply. She never asked how I got there, what I went through, who helped me when she wouldn't. She only wanted to claim the victory once the dust settled. Like I was a trophy she suddenly remembered she'd once owned. That's not how this works. When she passed, the church was full. I went, not for her, but because I knew people would be watching. And I didn't want the story they whispered about me to be that I stayed bitter. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. But I stood in the back, quietly, a shadow that carried more truth than all the eulogies put together. Some women from the congregation tried to speak to me after. I remember you from when you were little, one said. She talked about you all the time these last few years. I just smiled. I'm sure she did. As I turned to leave, I caught Marlene by the door. Her face had aged sharply, but her eyes still had that softness they'd always had when I was young. She reached out unsure, like someone trying to pet a wild animal. She would have loved to see you now, she said. She did see me, I replied. Just not the way she wanted to. Then I walked outside into the sun, heels clicking against the concrete, the same sound that once echoed as I ran to a law office in shoes 2 sizes too tight, with a dream too big for the woman who raised me. I made it without her, despite her, and that was enough, that was everything.